Welcome, everybody. It's the City of Fairview Planning Commission. Today is Tuesday, September 23rd. Can I get a roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Dew.
Here.
Commissioner Mondero.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Hooper.
Here.
Commissioner Pearson.
Here.
Commissioner Walters.
Here.
And Chair Holcomb.
Present. Thank you, everybody. Alrighty, adoption of minutes from November 14th, December 10th, and June 24th. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes?
Yep.
Yes, okay. Are there any corrections?
Typo on the November 12th at the bottom of the page, double T, E.
Ah,
Other than that, I'm good.
anyone else? All right, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from November 14th, December 10th, and June 24th with the noted correction. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. All right. Work session, floodplain overlay code revisions.
Okay, I'm gonna get the presentation up here, just a moment. I think we're okay. You can go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. The work session today is for an update to our floodplain overlay code amendments in response to the FEMA pre-implementation compliance measures. There we go. So the three topics that we're going to be covering in this work session today, the first one is the adoption of the 2020 Oregon Model Flood Hazard Management Ordinance to replace the 2019 ordinance that's currently used by Fairview. The second topic is the adoption of the additional standards to comply with the PICM compliance measures related to the Endangered Species Act. The third topic is the amendments to the review procedures. That is something we had talked about quite a few meetings ago to implement the type 1, type 2, and type 3 procedures for development within the floodplain instead of requiring every development in the floodplain to come in front of the Planning Commission for the type 3 hearing. So an overview for the 2020 Oregon Model Flood Hazard Management Ordinance. This was something that DLCD had developed and was approved by FEMA. This matches the Code of Federal Regulations and incorporates most of the current building code standards. This model ordinance is something that's used by the state. The City of Fairview currently uses the 2019 version of that. There's been two new versions of it released since we last updated our floodplain code here. So when we were looking through the PICMs and looking to see how that would fit into our existing code, we had realized, and we were talking with our legal counsel as far as how to best implement those, and we felt it would be a better idea to go through our floodplain code and essentially repeal what is there existing and to just adopt the 2020 model ordinance and include the new Pick'em language within it. So that way, any future updates that the state or FEMA requires of us, they'll update their ordinance in the same exact format that they have, and that'll make it a lot easier for staff to implement and just add new sections within our code if we just have it in the same exact format essentially that the state does. So going through the draft code here, I can go through each of the sections for you that were provided with your packet. So the first section, the FMC 19.105.010 is essentially the purpose statement of what the floodplain overlay chapter is. This first chapter, there's really only a few changes in here. There's a findings of fact document, and everything that's in yellow is something that's new that is not currently within our code. So you can see that the first bullet talks about that essentially the state of Oregon has designated the local government to have authority over development within the floodplain. It includes a paragraph of findings of fact. The statement of purpose we have already in our code. We're just missing one of the points at the very end here. And then there's another paragraph that's included that talks about methods of reducing flood losses. So the changes to this chapter are pretty sparse. There's not a ton that's new in here and nothing that's really impactful with a lot of the purpose statements that every chapter has. Under the definition section, there are 7 new definitions that aren't present within our current code. There are 10 definitions that are in the current code but are not within the model ordinance. Those codes are a little bit more specific. There's some definitions for DEQ, DLCD, definitions for the city of Fairview and the Fairview City Council. So things that are more specific to our jurisdiction as well. So what we're planning to do is to just adopt all of these definitions here so they'll match exactly what's in the Oregon's model ordinance as well as what was left that was in our code that wasn't in the model ordinance.
We're gonna leave green and add yellow.
Yeah, we found that they weren't duplicates of anything important, and we felt that, just leaving them in wouldn't be an issue. So the following section, which is the general provisions, this is also relatively unchanged, aside from some additional language about the state of Oregon specialty codes and language in there that talks about that requires all development in the floodplain to comply with this chapter. The Oregon specialty codes is related to the Oregon building code, and the text in red on the first page of that D2 talks about inserting infraction types or penalties for developing within the floodplain. And so when the time comes that we bring the text forward, we'll have replaced what's in red with the appropriate, whether it's some sort of a municipal code violation or some other avenue of, if you're developing in the floodplain without the correct permit approval, what's the avenue for that?
And I was just going to note, I just want to verify, with our legal counsel that applying the standard code compliance provisions in terms of violation is what we should be doing here. We do have procedures and standards in our code that direct the city what to do if there's any violation to the development code. So likely that's what we will insert here.
For the administration chapter, which is 040, this chapter designates who the floodplain administrator is, which is in this case the city manager or their designee, which falls to our department.
Sorry to jump in just once more, but and I was just going to note that previously the city's public works director, our former public works director, was the floodplain administrator. So in charge of, kind of managing code amendments as well as making determinations using their certification. Currently, we don't have that person on staff, but we contract with an engineering firm that sort of serves as our city engineer. And they have the certifications on their staff to help administer our floodplain code. So that would be sort of our designee at the current time.
So this particular chapter goes into what the process for the permit review, what type of information we need and need to have available to the public as far as floodplain goes. Talks about what we're responsible for doing if we're doing any sort of water course alterations, or if a developer is planning to make any sort of alteration to a water course, who they need to notify, which is FEMA, and what they need to include with that. As far as the requirement to submit new technical data, and a lot of the stuff that's in this chapter currently exists within our own code, but it is so much more, there's a lot more language within the model ordinance than we have in our current code. A lot of it touches on the same thing, where ours would just be, one sentence. Here it's, 3 to 4, where it covers generally the same things. It's just a lot longer. But we didn't notice anything necessarily that was drastically different, aside from what is in yellow that they had included in their ordinance. And at the very end of this chapter is where you'll find the review procedure, which is the type 1, type 2, and type 3 that goes along with the kind of the intensity of the use that you're proposing to do. So anything that's very low impact, that normally would be a type 1, is also going to be a type 1 floodplain permit. Activities and development that's a type 2 would also have just a type 2 floodplain, and same thing for type 3. So that language, which was, we had worked on it a few meetings ago, that's going to live in this chapter.
Now, can I stop you?
Yeah.
I'm lost. Where are you?
We're on attachment 2.
Attachment 2. Okay.
Under,
It's not numbered, so I can't
After
tell.
this page. These pages with all.
yeah.
Yeah. So if you look for on the back side of the page, the section 19.105.040 administration.
You're way ahead of me then.
So application review procedures, we're adding this time? It's not
Yes.
like highlighted purple or anything.
No, yeah, it's just, that's the new language. I should have had that highlighted.
Okay.
The color, but that's what we
Anyway,
carried over from the previous conversations we'd had with. The following section for 19.105.050 for the permitted use. This is also a carryover from the previous work we had done with the type 1, 2, and 3 language that just strikes out, because currently that section is called conditional uses, where now we're going to call it permitted uses, and they're all permitted following the review procedures that we just mentioned, and have that reference to that code there. Yeah.
First, just point of clarification, like the house that came before us on Fairview Lake, that would be in a floodplain area, wouldn't it not? You know which one I'm talking about?
that has a riparian buffer.
Right, but I'm just saying, I'm just asking the question, like,
Right.
would that be in a floodplain area?
So that dwelling must not have been in the special flood hazard area, the 100-year floodplain. So there are various different areas of, I believe it's because the level of the lake is controlled. And it's raised up and down seasonally, so the city has the ability to kind of control the potential flooding for the lake with the Columbia, with the drainage district, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's just interesting that it wouldn't be.
Right, so sort of similar, the areas that are just south of the Columbia River, there's, the levee protects from flooding, obviously, but the way, I guess, in which the floodplain and the special flood hazard area is drawn is, it's pretty interesting kind of how it, comes in and out.
And moving on to 070, which is our general standard section. This section essentially contains and outlines all of our construction standards for developments of structures or infrastructure within the floodplain. This talks about everything, you know, from your anchoring, your different construction materials you can use, different utilities and equipment standards. There are some new standards that weren't in the previous code for things like electrical, mechanical, plumbing, tanks, structures that are in multiple flood zone, as well as garages and accessory structures. So all of those have been highlighted in yellow that are going to be included with this, that talk about, you know, if you're building a detached garage in the floodplain, here's some, you know, standards for that.
I've got a question for you. Back there under 19105.070, down under construction materials and methods, A, 3.A says utility equipment resistant to flood damage. How's that measured?
What's the definition of that?
Yeah, because there's a few things where they refer to flood resistant. But I didn't see a definition of what the city says that is.
So, some of this language here is intended to reflect the building code. So with respect to some of these items that are related to sort of the specifications for equipment, when we are making our decision, as a planning staff for approving this, development in the floodplain, we would make sure that there was a condition on it, and that when they received their building permit approval, the building department would also ensure that the specifications for their equipment noted that they were sort of flood resistant. I don't know exactly how equipment is designed to be flood resistant, but
Float away?
right,
That's resistant.
doesn't allow flood water to enter. But those specifications, yes, would need to be
It'd be site,
would need to be looked at, right?
so it'd be site specific then.
It would be.
Okay, thank you.
So once again, we're keeping the green and adding the yellow?
Yes.
Okay, and then moving on to 19.105.080. This is the chapter that is directly related to our Pick'em option that we've went with. So this is a new section that totally, nothing within this chapter is within our current code as well. This section contains the language for our modified Pick'em option that I'll go over in a few slides that requires the applicant to confirm one of the following four: that they've obtained a floodplain assessment from a qualified professional, or their project falls under another formal consultation, or their development's covered by an existing habitat assessment, or their development is exempt based on a list of exemptions in the code section. I'll circle back to that particular section after. The last one is 0.90 for variance. So this was moved from the previous number to make room for that Pick'em chapter. So typically we like to keep, the variance section was the very last like subsection within the floodplain code. So we've moved it to the bottom just for consistency's sake. The variance section does have quite a bit of differences from our current code. The general variance section, which is the first half of this, which on the page here, isn't necessarily very specific to Fairview or our procedures for variances in general. So you can see what is in blue are standards that are in the model ordinance that we wouldn't necessarily need to make adjustments for. Everything that's in the yellow is stuff that's in our current variance code that is not found within the model ordinance. So there's a significant amount of things. So the current variance code talks about, you know, the planning commission shall hear and decide requests for variances. The council shall hear and decide when it's appealed from the planning commission. It talks about, you know, in reviewing an application for a variance of the floodplain chapter, the planning commission shall consider. So it talks a lot more specifics about our procedure of how somebody goes about getting a variance to the floodplain chapter here. So that's kind of the biggest difference between our code and the variance, is just being more specific to what's in Fairview.
So I understand under this section here, that which is in yellow would remain and that which is in blue would be added.
Essentially, yes, we would keep the same standards. We feel like it would be helpful to leave what is there because it's specific to what we do and lets everybody know that this is kind of the procedure that we take for that. And then to go back to the Pickums, so at our previous meeting, we had talked about that there were 3 different options that were provided from FEMA. The first one was to adopt this model ordinance, not to be confused with the state's model ordinance. It was this Pickum specific one that the city's legal counsel said that their model ordinance would likely violate state law. So that was not something that they were going to be considering. The third option was to prohibit all new development in the floodplain. And then we landed on a modified version of option 2, which is that permit by permit habitat mitigation requirement, and to achieve no net loss using that habitat assessment and mitigation guide, which is what the language in that new created chapter is going to be. That way, the city attorney provided us with some of that extra language, and that way we can meet Oregon state law requirements for clear and objective standards that the base Pickum model ordinance just did not pass the test on that one. So we went with this modified version to come into compliance. And then this is just an overview of the review procedures that we had mentioned as far as the development type, as far as the type 1, type 2, type 3 in the floodplain. That's going to be implemented with this change as well. And this talks about stuff that is light in intensity for patios in your residential backyard. It's just going to be a type 1 floodplain permit, which is a staff level decision, versus a new industrial building that's quite large is going to be a type 3 review because it would require a type 3 review regardless. And so here's the next steps for this. So these amendments may limit the use of your property within the floodplain. So we would need to provide a Measure 56 notice to every impacted property, and a planning commission hearing will likely to be scheduled for November. And if you have any questions for us that's more on the technical side of things, we would like to take note of those and get back to you all when we consult with our floodplain administrator for some more technical questions that we might not know the answer to.
Questions?
Yes? I'm at a disadvantage because the attachments aren't page numbered and I'm not smart enough to go find them, but it came up somewhere talking about garages and things, and I wondered, I didn't see anywhere, and I don't believe in previous stuff we've looked at where we mentioned tiny home. Is that considered an ADU as far as the regulations and codes concerned, or is that something we haven't addressed yet?
Permit structure.
So if it is built on a foundation, then it would be like an accessory dwelling. It would be subject to any floodplain standards that are required of habitable dwelling spaces. But if it is a tiny home on wheels, then it's not even considered sort of a building according to the building code, because it's movable. So I guess technically,
It's an RV?
you could move it out of the floodplain. So it wouldn't be subject to these standards. But if it is just a really small house on a foundation, then it would be, it would need to follow the requirements in this chapter.
Yeah, because Roger could probably answer this better than me, but they build them both ways.
Right,
I think if it's in a manufacturing park, then it has to be anchored. If it's like a part of, like, same with like a motorhome, that also they let those park in, parks, some manufactured parks. If it's in a floodplain, it has to be anchored to a foundation, or some way anchored to the side.
right. So like, yes, like a manufactured, like a HUD manufactured dwelling, yeah, being a little bit different from perhaps a tiny home on wheels, but,
So,
right,
yeah. I mean, it's in the
yeah, okay.
code, yeah.
More questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
I
finish.
can always come back.
No, that's all right.
Anyway, on page whatever it is, under specific standards for riverine, including non-coastal flood, it's toward the back there, there's a section there where it talks about crawl spaces being used solely for parking, storage, and building access. Again, what happens to finished basements? They don't fit that category. Solely used for parking, storage, or building access. Am I reading that wrong?
Which,
I don't know, I can't say what page.
Code does it apply to?
What's that?
What code section?
It's
I think it's probably,
utilities and equipment. Let me see. I can't. Oh, it's under 19-105-070. It's about 3 pages in on the backside.
okay, got
Find
it,
it.
got it.
You go down to 2 flood openings, and then it talks, it has
Yes.
B, see it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when I thought about that,
Okay, so we're
Wrong
gonna
page.
flip over to the next page, and you're gonna see toward the bottom, residential construction.
yeah,
So there are separate standards where it talks about residential construction, and it says, new construction, conversion to, and substantial improvement of any residential structure shall have the lowest floor, including the basement.
Right.
So the code, I guess, addresses basements regardless of exactly how you're gonna use your basement, because I think that's difficult to regulate after the building is constructed. And it doesn't really matter if it's gonna be storage or if it's going to be a living space for the purpose of this code.
okay, I read that, but I guess I didn't connect the two,
Maybe I didn't answer your question, though.
yeah. Because I'm thinking a crawl space is usually 3 or 4 feet deep. And a basement can be anything.
Right, I guess.
Catch the net connection, my bad.
Well, yeah, I guess that's it.
All of this applies, it really comes down to if you're gonna do something or alter your dwelling, then it comes into play. But if you have an existing house and it's in the floodplain and has a basement, it is what it is. It's like, if it floods, it floods. But if you went to alter it or build something new, then it would come into code compliance. And then that's when it would trigger something with the building department. Otherwise, you're on your own because it was existing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, basement or garage or anything.
I see one more Post-it note.
Yeah, I do, but I'm trying to find out where I'm at. Okay.
Don't worry, take your time.
About. Stands for flood zones. Well, I'll just ask the question. There's a section here on recreational vehicles within the AO zone. And then it said, a requirement to be on the site for fewer than 180 consecutive days and fully licensed. Well, I speak for myself and my neighborhood, it's full of motorhomes. And my motorhome didn't go anywhere for months on a time. So who's monitoring that? Is that just a follow the rules or we'll find you some way kind of thing?
Well, I think the distinction is that on, if your RV is parked on your property, but you're just storing it there like you would your car, it's a little bit different from maybe an RV park where people are using that RV and that location as their either permanent or semi-permanent place of residence. So I think that's where they're drawing the distinction of, it needs to be on the site for fewer than 180 days or be licensed. So like if it's gonna be kind of a permanent fixture to the location, it would need to, you know, meet different standards and be ready to move off-site.
Yeah, maybe being a little bit picky-ish here, but anyway.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying because it doesn't necessarily draw a distinction in terms of, you know, recreational vehicles placed on sites. Isn't super clear, I don't think, in terms of what I believe the intent of that standard to be. I can certainly follow up though.
Commissioner?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thanks for putting this together. It's pretty comprehensive and I appreciate it, although you're not going to get a tip for not color coding those sentences or paragraphs, so your tip is gone.
Consistency.
Yeah. Yeah, color coded those, but not that one. Okay, my question's just for me, kind of an educational thing, because I'm relatively new to this. Under application review procedure, are those procedures, it's up to the city to determine 1, 2, or 3? I mean, no one tells the city whether that's going to be a 1 or 2 or 3. It's totally up to us. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Any other technical questions? No?
And we did have that same question of whether we could dictate the review procedures, and we did check with the Department of Land Conservation and Development and their FEMA staff, and they confirmed that it is up to us.
Okay. All heads are shaking no over here. Any other technical questions? No? Okay. I think that's all the questions.
Yeah. And again, this was, you know, we just wanted to, since we sort of changed course in terms of how we were going to be updating the code to comply with the model ordinance. I think the last time we weren't sure exactly how different it was going to be and maybe didn't understand that it was more substantial since we hadn't updated our code since, you know, late 2018, early 2019. So you have a little more time to familiarize yourself with it if you wish, and then we'll be working to put together a mailing list for everyone who owns property in the floodplain. So we anticipate it'll be, you know, not huge, but it's, you know, a fairly good-sized notification list that we'll be sending this out to notify everyone of the public hearing.
And when will that be happening?
I'm not committing exactly at this time. We're thinking November.
20 days prior to.
Oh, yes, the notice. It needs to go out between 20 and 40 days before the hearing.
Okay. And you want that hearing to be in November?
That's what we were hoping for.
Okay.
Yes, so we just need to get a few things organized to get the mailing list and the notification in place.
Okay. Is that all? All right. Shall we move on to work session B, general industrial zone truck parking uses?
Okay. All right, so this is kind of a new topic for the planning commission. I know this was not on your work plan, but I'm bringing it forward because it's something that's come up a few times lately, and in speaking with the city manager about the different ways we could approach it, we decided to get some feedback from the planning commission and the city council about whether or not to take up a code amendment. So let's see, is this my first slide? So just to orient everyone, this question really pertains to the general industrial zone in Fairview. And that zoning district is shown here in purple. It is located on the north side of I-84 and the east side of 223rd, but sort of stretches all the way from 84 north to the Columbia River. So this is the text from the development code stating the purpose of the zoning district. This zoning code was put in place in 2001 and has been minimally updated since that time. The most extensive update was probably to add a section for compliance with the Metro Code related to certain employment and industrial area requirements. But generally, this district is intended for a broad range of uses. You know, it cites that it provides for normal operation of an industry. It talks about a range of both light and heavy industrial uses, and that it's intended to segregate incompatible development from other districts. So separating residential and commercial development from industrial development. While providing a high quality environment for businesses and employees. And there are three principles here that don't talk a lot very specifically about the types of uses, but providing for efficient use of land and public services, provide transportation options for employees and customers, provide appropriate design standards to accommodate a range of users in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And there really are not hardly any design standards in this zoning district. All right, now, no, this doesn't want to go. Okay. So let's just take a look at the permitted uses for the zoning district. So this is probably easier for you to see on the screen in front of you. So there's different categories. In the industrial category, there's heavy manufacturing, assembly, and processing of raw materials, and that is a conditional use, so that would need approval by the Planning Commission. There's light manufacturing, for example, electronic equipment, printing, bindery, furniture, and similar goods. Somewhat outdated, maybe, in terms of those examples. There's warehouse and distribution, of which there is a lot in Fairview in the general industrial zone. So, you know, warehouse and distribution and light manufacturing are some more on the kind of light industrial side. Compared to heavy manufacturing, and junkyard, motor vehicle, wrecking yard, and similar uses are a little more on the heavy industrial side of things. And then there's sort of a blanket Columbia River industrial uses north of Marine Drive. So those are river dependent uses that are located right along the Columbia River and rely on barging in and out of materials, like the concrete batch plants that the Planning Commission approved this year. And then there's sort of this catch-all uses similar to those listed above. And you'll see on this column where it says additional standards, it references this piece here, 19.85 O2OB, And that references the procedure that must be followed to determine if a use is similar or not. And the procedure to be followed for that is essentially, it's a kind of a code interpretation procedure. It's a staff level decision with an opportunity for the decision to get appealed to the Planning Commission. And then just for context, there are also non-industrial uses that are permitted in a limited way. Office and other commercial uses are allowed as a conditional use when they're sort of part of an industrial use, but not the primary use. Retail and commercial service uses at a small scale, up to 5,000 square feet, are also allowed, similarly as part of a larger industrial use. And then there are a number of community service and parks uses. Those would also be conditional uses. So government facilities, private utilities, open space, other special district facilities, vocational schools if they're located with the industrial use. And then again, there's uses similar to those listed above. And then last, there's just the other category, which is wireless communication equipment and accessory uses and structures. So just to kind of look at it at our general industrial zone in a little more detail, this is the northern area. And this area is characterized by larger parcels, more irregularly shaped parcels. I would say more constraints in terms of natural resources. So there are areas here where there's, large mapped wetland area and stream corridors. And so that's part of the reason that there's more open space in this area. These uses are, have a little bit more separation from residential and commercial uses. And that, obviously the river area here, and then with the exception of some of the uses over on Marine Drive, like Allwood Recyclers, they tend to be set back a little bit more onto the site. Then in the southern area of the general industrial zone is developed much more densely. So this is primarily the Townsend Business Park, an area that was once the berry farm for Townsend Farms, and they went through a master planning process and subdivided that for industrial development. So that is developed in a much more kind of organized and, in a more of a grid fashion with public streets that come closer to the buildings. But you do find a mix of uses here. So there's industrial service uses, there's manufacturing, there are distribution uses. I didn't label everything that's in the business park, but this building here, this is the Amazon last mile delivery service. There are a bunch of buildings that have multiple individual tenants in them. But again, a lot of kind of warehouse and distribution. There's a building over here that has a couple of manufacturing uses in it. This is Knight Transportation. So they're a large freight distribution trucking company, and this is kind of their hub for drivers to come. So it's kind of, there's facilities to service the trucks, as well as kind of like a place for drivers to meet and to rest, and there's laundry facilities and all of that. There's the Townsend Farms cold storage building, sort of the newest development here, and then the Townsend Farms production facility is over here. You've got the Townsend Farms seasonal housing manufactured park here, a couple of different sort of building service contractors that have office space as well as storage yards. There's AD Truck Services here with the truck service building. There's a pallet repair company over here. This currently is some outdoor storage. They've had a pre-application conference thinking to move toward development of that site. So there is some diversity here, but the more recent development that's happened in the business park has been a lot of kind of warehouse and distribution uses, but all with significant buildings included in the development. So the issue that we are coming up against is that we have found existing development and some requests recently to develop sites or to use a site for semi-truck parking with no associated servicing or distribution, warehouse, or office use. Essentially just a truck parking lot. One of the questions has come from a use that was permitted or approved by the Planning Commission to include a warehouse building, which they are currently not wanting to build and just use the truck parking lot. So given the number of times that this has come up lately, there's a couple of new requests that we've had for this use, and then we've also found a property being used in this way that never went through a land use or business license process. We just felt that it warrants considering doing a code amendment to clarify the permitted uses. So this would give the Planning Commission and the City Council and the public an opportunity to consider the uses that they would like to see in this zoning district, and to consider it in a more public way instead of just doing a similar use determination on a particular site, which, you know, then would of course kind of set precedents for future requests. And so there's the permitted use aspect, and then, you know, you start thinking about what would the development requirements be? How would we review an application to develop a truck parking lot and what standards would apply? And there really are limited standards for truck parking lots. They would need to comply with access requirements, with surfacing requirements for paving, stormwater management, and landscaping. And then I think the other significant thing for development is that parking lots would need to be paved, and new parking areas that meet that 1/2 acre threshold or larger would need to comply with those fairly recent tree canopy requirements. And this is a picture of, I think, a portion of Knight Transportation's facility. It was supposed to be in Fairview, but I don't think it actually is. So we did look at what some of the other nearby cities allow, and so we'll just go through a few of those. In Wood Village, they allow warehouse and freight movement as a permitted use in their manufacturing zoning districts and then their split commercial industrial zoning district. And they define it as warehouse and freight movement firms are involved in the storage or movement of goods for themselves or other firms. And they say that goods are generally delivered to other firms or the final customer, except some will call pickup. So not a lot of on-site customers coming in. But they do also specifically list truck fleet parking and maintenance areas as accessory uses, not as the primary use. Troutdale, however, they do allow standalone truck parking under their freight and trucking firms land use in their general industrial zone. And it would be a conditional use in their light industrial zone. And I'm sorry, I don't know exactly where their general and light industrial zoning districts are. Do you recall, Alex?
Their light industrial zones are primarily north of I-84, closest to, I believe that's Marine Drive that goes up, like southwest of where the airport is. And then everything that's immediately west of those properties right along the road are all general industrial, like back further off of like Dunbar and where there's a lot more storage yards and uses back there is where their general industrial is mostly at, from what I remember.
Okay, thank you.
That's the warehouse would be north of Troutdale Airport.
Yeah, the ones north of it also are general industrial as well.
And then the city of Gresham allows transportation / distribution as a permitted use in, so they have heavy and general industrial zoning districts. So they defined the use as providing for transportation of cargo using motor vehicles or rail spurs. Goods are generally distributed to other firms or the final customer and often associated with warehousing and storage facilities. They list some examples for this particular use being parcel services and distribution centers. They do have a separate use category that's warehouse and distribution. And I didn't look at that closely enough to understand the distinction. But similar to Wood Village, fleet parking is listed as an accessory use. And they do specifically require these areas to be paved, meeting a certain standard. So just a few kind of big picture considerations. I think as I started to think about this question, it led to, I guess, thinking about some larger economic development questions and industrial land use questions for the city. So I think some things to consider are, how does this fit in with the city's goals and objectives for industrial land? The comprehensive plan and an economic opportunities analysis, which is a requirement for comprehensive plan updates, is 20 years old now, over 20 years old. Interestingly, in 2005, which was just a couple years after the comprehensive plan was last updated, the city had an industrial land study completed by a consultant, and they were looking at, among other things, the city's goal to achieve a higher employment density, as well as a higher quality of employment on the remaining industrial land. And I think part of this was looking at how many Fairview residents worked in Fairview with a goal of creating more employment opportunities so that more residents could work locally. And interestingly, there were a number of recommendations, one of which was to rezone some of the general industrial to light industrial, and a couple of other rezoning items, but that was never implemented. And I haven't had time to look into why at this point, but again, that was 20 years ago. And I would say for many years, the focus, it was really developing the land in the Townsend Business Park. That was a huge effort on the part of the city, working with Townsend Farms to come up with a concept for rezoning that whole area from agricultural holding to general industrial, coming up with a master plan, an idea of how the subdivision would work and the phasing of improvements. New roads were put in. There were other transportation improvements in terms of traffic signals. So I would say for, from the mid 90s through probably 2015, that area was kind of getting built out, and that was a big focus for the city. Currently, there is limited industrial land remaining, particularly in the area that's south of I-84, in the area in the Townsend Business Park and kind of surrounding that. And then I think the other thing when we looked at, and I can go back to the slide with the sort of snapshots of the north and south area of our general industrial zone, but kind of looking at that, they're quite different. You know, the area around the business park is just more densely developed, a little bit more of a kind of light industrial characteristic. And the area that's further north with these kind of big irregular parcels and more natural resources has kind of a different use and purpose. So what I'm hoping for this evening is for the commission to, provide any feedback, just to kind of have a discussion about the idea of standalone truck parking as a permitted use, for you to identify any information that you think would be needed, number one, to decide whether we should take up a code amendment or not. And then number two, if the city council says, yes, let's look at clarifying the code, what information would be helpful to come up with what the revised code should say. And then I am going to be having a brief conversation with the city council about this in October. So any kind of input that you would like me to share with the council at that time. And then outside of this, current issue, what are long-term considerations for our industrial land, and does this lead to doing more work in terms of our industrial zone?
Okay.
So accessory use. To me, that term has always been associated with, you have an infrastructure, and then that infrastructure uses, say, heavy trucks, long-haul trucks, whatever you want to use.
Right.
And that parking is associated, having spaces to park those trucks is associated with that operation. That's to me what accessory use is. There's something there. There's some type of infrastructure there that they need parking for their trucks that either stay overnight or getting reloaded or whatever. Troutdale, do they really have in Troutdale parking lots that are standalone for truck parking only, or are all those parking lots associated with a business? And I've got a point here that I'll make at the end. Are there any standalone that you know of or aware of that aren't associated with some type of other infrastructure? That's a question.
I don't know that we have an answer for that right now.
Gresham, the language said they include fleet parking. Again, that fleet parking is most likely associated with some type of load, unload, or reload operation where they need to have space to park trucks. That's it. 2 inches worth of asphalt, not enough. Troutdale does?
Yeah.
Have standalone?
Trucker Road.
What?
Trucker Road, like right there next to the freeway. They're not long-term, but they're short-term, they're overnight. I mean, it's the same.
Kind of like a truck stop.
Same process.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I think that they pay, they probably pay by the night, or they,
Yeah, but but a lot of those are associated with the, like, Pilot or whatever. I mean, they use those facilities, they're associated with those facilities.
That's what these facilities would be for. They would be for short-term and long-term, meaning my son-in-law, or my ex-son-in-law, he drove to Vancouver, and there was a site-specific spot that entered on asphalt, and then you had gravel that they parked on, and they basically paid, by the month, by, whatever, however long, and it was long-term, meaning they would go there every night, park the truck, come back next morning, pick it up. And the thing with Troutdale is that they don't necessarily, park it there overnight, for long-term usage. It's usually cycled, right?
Right.
Somebody's gonna be there for 2 or 3 days, they know they've got a load, they gotta pick up in a couple days, so then they're gonna grab it,
Still overnight.
or they're traveling.
Yeah.
They're just on their way.
And thank you for that information. My concern here is Fairview doesn't have a whole lot of land left. And to me, you need to maximize the land you have that will provide an appropriate boost in revenue. And standalone truck parking in its nature not going to provide the standalone revenue you would have if an actual infrastructure was put on that property and the trucks were associated with that infrastructure. I mean, we're already hurting budget-wise. And that's my concern. When you start utilizing land that's already at a minimum for stuff that really isn't going to boost your revenue for the city. And I mean, I could be way off here, but it just doesn't make any sense. Again, most of these other examples, thank you for that clarification. Most of these other examples, these other cities, they're associated with something else, some other infrastructure there. As you say, it's an included fleet parking, or it's in addition to the current infrastructure or whatever. If we start laying a large chunk of property, a half acre, you know, these, if you're talking just the tractor parking, okay, a half acre. But if you're talking tractor trailer parking, you're not gonna get a whole lot of tractor trailers in a half acre and be able to maneuver them in and out of a half acre. So I think we might, this is just my opinion, I think we might be barking up the wrong tree and trying to beef up codes to allow this.
We have Commissioner Mondero has a comment.
Would you pull up the highlighted area of our general industrial area so we can have that as perspective?
Yes, absolutely. Do you want the one of the whole?
Yes.
Yeah.
When we look at the general industrial zone, and that, which is in the Townsend area there, which is actually north of Sandy, correct?
That's correct.
And that area there is pretty much developed out with the exception of a few parcels. Now, we do have night trucking in there, which they use for layover areas, probably just some, I'm speculating here, I don't know for sure, but probably some transfer capabilities between loads and different trucks and stuff like that, as well as what you pointed out was a kind of a layover area and a rest area for the truckers as they're in transit. We also have the AC trucking outfit there, which appears like they have regular parking there for commercial vehicles, whether or not they actually need any servicing and stuff like that. And it appears like that's a go-to place. But it's well managed, as pointed out, Garth, you know, this has accessory, you know, the trucking component, parking is an accessory to the main business. And that would probably apply tonight too. The question I have is, of all the general industrial area that we have available, how much of it is actually developable? Well, how much can we actually develop? We have a large portion that's wetland, and that's north of Marine Drive.
And culturally sensitive.
And culturally sensitive. So it's basically hands-off unless they're, as we just pointed out in our FEMA component here and the code regulations, they would have to make some significant changes in excavating and elevating to get above the floodplain. So we could probably discount that. So really, of the area there where we have adjacent to the forklift Heister or whatever it is that they have there, there is a significant portion there along 223rd that hasn't been developed. Is that correct?
So the developable area in the general industrial zone, so this Heister Yale owns a large parcel right in here. So they could further infill, but there are also some natural resource constraints. And there's this triangle right here, see if I can get my cursor, where it says AH. So this is the agricultural holding zone. So the intent of this parcel is that it would get rezoned to general industrial. However, we discovered there's also floodplain mapped on this parcel. I should have provided a map with the natural resource layer on it, because I think that informs the developable land. This area, it's basically this section right here, if you can see my cursor, of the Port of Portland's parcel that is available for development. So it's a narrow piece. The rest of this is has wetland mitigation that was done for development elsewhere on the port's property. And then in the Townsend Business Park, there's this vacant parcel here, which is owned by OK Express. There's this parcel here, which has kind of been used as a storage yard, but the applicant came in for a pre-application conference to think about what they could develop there. And then other sites, I guess, would be that aren't newly developed, could potentially see some redevelopment. You know, there's a property right here that really isn't in a real significant industrial use, and there could be some other potential for redevelopment, but it is limited. You're correct.
So there is a potential to be able to develop something of this nature, and I think the question that comes up here is how would this be managed? If everything that we have so far, including the RV parking area, that's a good example of a long-term storage of the vehicles, but they have management people there on site. It's a gated community, it's controlled. And if we were to entertain certain areas within the general industrial zone for the purpose of parking, then I would consider that as being a possibility. It might be site-specific, particularly along the area of 223rd when you get down here toward the Columbia River. There you already have a concrete batch plant, you have a major excavating company there. None of those things are obtrusive to the general population. But I would have to say that anything that we would consider that would be specific to just being able to park big rigs and their trailers would have to be something that was gated and managed, had security on site and these sort of things. They would be conditional, in my opinion.
Right, remember how many members of the public we had come and talk about traffic and congestion and speeding with respect to the OK application?
I do.
Commissioner Pearson?
Excuse me, that was my point too. I mean, traffic is bad enough as it is, so you think of the impact of that kind of general heavy truck traffic on 223rd. There's only two ways in and out, Marine Drive and 223rd. And so that's gonna put a big impact, whatever we decide, big impact on traffic. And it's already god awful on 223rd.
Well, I was surprised to find that Knight has this facility here in the Townsend business area. I see them on the freeway, but I don't see them that much going down 223rd.
Come down my way. The amount of dump trucks and concrete trucks has doubled in the last 3 months.
Interesting.
And normal traffic, I mean, traffic on 223rd has changed in the last few years, it's gotten heavier. Because I live right off of 223rd, and I had trouble waiting to get out tonight, and that's at 6 o'clock in the evening. So you're getting all the plants and all the thing else dump their traffic at that time. Going up 223rd is the only way to go.
I pulled out of, what is that, Fairview Lake Parkway or whatever it was, to turn right onto 223rd. And right after I turned right onto 223rd, this is before I even got to the railroad overpass, I'm behind, I'm stopped. The traffic is so bad. I literally pull out, I'm stopped.
Right.
I know when I leave from my house too, to reiterate what they're saying, I don't even take 223rd anymore. I come down to Fairview Parkway and come around.
Yeah, it seems like a lot more traffic off of Marine Drive.
Particularly too, now with that apartment finally open, right there next to us, the traffic has really increased.
Commissioner Walters?
Question for you. Right now, it's a conditional use, or it is not a conditional use?
Right,
Because, I mean, we approved whatever, I forget the name of the trucking company, but it was on Sandy Boulevard where they wanted to expand their facility, and that's what they do, is they have overnight.
AD.
right, AD truck services.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. So I think the question, so right now it's not clear in the code, it's not listed. AD truck services was, I think, approved as a truck servicing. They have a building where they maintain the trucks and they have an office in there as well. So the truck parking lot was considered to be sort of part of an overall truck service and office business operation. Whereas the requests that we've received would have no building, it would just be a straight parking lot. And I think that's where the kind of the question came up of how, is it similar to one of these other uses? And, you know, if so, what's that determination? Or do we just update the code to make it clear so these questions don't keep coming up?
And so my input on this is that you got somebody who owns a piece of property, and the development costs for putting a business in there that consists of office or warehouse or, you know, let's say concrete tilt-up, whatever it is, the development costs are huge. That's why you see only a handful of companies that do that, that actually go in, build the tilt-up building, and then lease it. And I'm sure that you've driven by in Sandy and seen all of those are companies that have, you know, billion-dollar backing. So you got an owner that has a piece of property, they don't have the backing to do that. They could sell it if it was worth something, but then you don't know what you're gonna get in there, you know, if somebody comes in. So this person wants to use their property, and I have a little bit of experience in being involved in building storage facilities, and just renting RV parking or boat parking or car parking, all of that stuff it's very, you get paid very well to do that, right? So somebody wants to bring that in. As far as management, you know, yeah, that could be, but that's private business. That's up to them. If they have trucks that come in there and the trucks are getting broken into, the people aren't gonna park the trucks there. I mean, that's a self-managed portion of it. I don't think that we would regulate anything from the city of Fairview that you have to do this, and this. I think if somebody wants to operate the business, they're gonna put up whatever, you know, needs to be done to be able to park vehicles or, you know, trucks, then I'm all for it, because I just think that a person has a piece of property sitting there doing nothing. If they can make money off of it, then they're gonna be paying local taxes on it. So
Yeah.
for me, I think it's a win. If it just sits there empty and they're not doing anything with it, then they're just paying, you know, minimal taxes on it. I'm sure there's gonna be some type of a fee that's gonna go along with operating the business, because I'm sure that that's gonna, you know, be a part of it, whatever happens. But I just think if we keep putting stipulations and saying, okay, you can only operate this type of business, well, then nothing happens. Go look at office leasing right now. There are so many offices for lease, so nobody's gonna come in and build an office. Warehouse, go down Sandy Boulevard and see how many of those tilt-ups have leased, you know, warehouse space. There's a lot there. So, I mean, I think that my feelings is that we should make it as easy for somebody to come in and rent it. It's not a residential zone, it's already zoned industrial, and That's what it's basically there for. So I think that the oversight of the city in terms of what is gonna be required, we would probably disagree on that part of it. Because obviously there's all kinds of regulations that are gonna go into what's gonna be allowed, the asphalt, everything else that is gonna go into that. But, I mean, I think we need to kind of loosen up a little bit and let people use their land to be able to make a buck or two on it, rather than have it sit.
Any other comments? Well, I tend to agree that if there's a parcel that's not being used, that, it would be good to allow them to use it in whatever way they need to use it. I have a little bit of a bad feeling based on what happened at the OK hearing. We need to be able to communicate with members of the public that it's not gonna be like a haven for night street racing and stuff like that, but, yeah. But I'm okay with parking, and if they put in trees, that would be great, right?
Yeah, but it's like Tony on what Garth said.
Semi-truck parking, you're not gonna have trees in the parking lot.
Well,
It's not gonna happen.
we just passed all this tree stuff.
Yeah, but there's a landscape requirement for even the parking lot.
Yeah.
But again, to pony on what Garth said, we're not, there's no benefit to the city.
Well, there
No
is.
benefit to the population.
Minimal.
I'm wondering how much of this is within the urban renewal area?
It is currently all within the urban renewal area.
See, now there we get like a huge benefit. If they make improvements to vacant land and they start making money and we get taxes from it and it improves the value of the land, then it helps our urban renewal area, right?
Right, so the increased valuation of the property from new development gets funneled into our urban renewal area.
Right, so even a parking lot is more valuable than
A vacant lot.
vacant lot.
So just a point, you've got, let's say you've got a 5-acre parcel, right? And if you let it out to trucks, for parking, you're gonna have X amount of trucks that are gonna be able to fit in there logistically, right?
Yep.
To be able to pull in, back up. all this.
Maneuver back in.
And the one in Vancouver that I'm thinking of, that I've actually been to, because it's right next to a big parts house, it's huge. I mean, we're talking probably 10 acres minimum. So there's limited amount of trucks, right? But let's say that same parcel gets developed, and it's developed with employees and vehicles, coming in and out every single day, plus employees. Which do you think is gonna generate more traffic?
Hold on.
So, I mean, I think that it's not, it's just so expensive to develop that for us to think that you're gonna attract a company to come in and build or to buy a piece of property, or an owner who, maybe it's family owned and it's just been passed down, who knows? I mean, I just don't think we're gonna realistically see a business come in and do that, but if we did, I mean, it's gonna create more traffic than, however many trucks fit on something like that.
What's the smallest vacant lot we're talking about here? Of all these that are open, acreage wise, what's the smallest?
Let's see, this lot right here at 223rd and Townsend Way.
How many
is
acres?
About 5 acres.
Really?
That's about as small as I would go.
It's bigger than
I
that.
had a CDL, I used to drive these things for a city, right? Yeah, it's not just parking spaces. You have to leave large swaths of this property open for trucks to drive in and maneuver around, let alone, I mean, and granted, some of these truck drivers are phenomenal at maneuvering their vehicles. but they still have to have a certain amount of room that can't be used for parking. It's just there. And if you're gonna think about requirements for leveling and do all that, 2 inches of asphalt is not gonna hold up to 80,000 pounds.
It's a 3-inch asphalt.
Well, one of these things I saw said 2-inch.
Oh,
That's not gonna hold up.
yeah.
It's just not. So you're gonna start seeing this wavy thing throughout the parking lot, and it's just, so there's gotta be some really good engineered requirements about how thick this gotta be, the gravel layer, how the dirt work is done. Just,
And traffic mitigation so that we can direct them towards Marine Drive, not Sandy.
Well, yeah.
Good luck with that.
yeah, there's a lot to consider here, and I think when you do this, you'll have to be very specific.
Judicial,
What?
very judicial.
Yeah, there you go, about what type of requirements, if this, you're gonna allow for this, is gonna happen. I mean, I agree with my esteemed colleague there, you get more out of used land than you do vacant land, absolutely. And if I'm a landowner, I'm either gonna try to sell my land into one of these spots, or I'm gonna try to do something with it to make revenue, because I'm paying money on an empty, I'm still paying taxes on an empty lot, it's just a lot less.
Are we answering your question?
Too much?
No, this is, I mean, I'm gathering all your feedback up, and then I'll be able to share your different opinions and thoughts with the city council.
For point of clarification.
This is,
The city of Portland, their requirements are 12 inches of gravel compacted and 3 inches of asphalt for anywhere that has semi-truck or industrial truck parking. And that's their permitted, inspected requirements.
And that's bare minimum. I mean, if you're smart, you're gonna put 4 or 5 inches of asphalt with the same amount of gravel, so.
and I'll just note that that is really something that would be reviewed at the time of building permits, and is not something that we would specify in the zoning code. It's just not the type of thing that we specify for other private property in the zoning code, but it's likely something that would be, I honestly don't know exactly what the requirements are in terms of the building code for, depth of material, but, you would have a geotechnical report that would look at your soil conditions, and it would be, I think, appropriately built based on that.
Other comments?
Just one. Again, I'm going to reiterate, I think specific properties might be conducive to be able to do that. Ones that are farther away from residents, if you're going to have truck parking, you're going to have a lot of noise 24/7. And it's going to be coming and going, you're going to have backup, beeping going on and stuff like that. You look at an area there where the land is part of, owned by the Port of Portland, over there by the Columbia River. I could say that, yeah, that would be ideal. But I would still say that it'd have to be something that is set up where it has some sort of control over it, not unlike the RV park is, where you have a card key or code that you have to be able to access. It's fenced. It's not going to allow people to get in there and do drifting in the middle of the night when there's a vacant spot. So, I mean, those are some considerations. There are some places that would probably be conducive for having this.
Great.
Great, thank you for the discussion and all the feedback. And again, this isn't making a determination right now of whether or not to allow it, but it's bringing some feedback forward to the city council so they can decide if we should do a code amendment.
Right. I mean,
And the code amendment, I think, the code amendment could say, yes, it's allowed, or no, it's not allowed.
Well, at the bare minimum, it would be nice
to flesh out any sections of code that are ambiguous, because clearly, yeah, I like improving the code, thank you.
I have one thing to say.
Okay, good.
Looking at the roads surrounding all of these areas, who owns North Marine Drive and who owns 223rd and who owns Sandy Boulevard?
Multnomah County, Multnomah County, Multnomah County.
The reason why I ask is if we get all this traffic, who's gonna be responsible for maintaining those roads? And if the traffic is really heavy, are they gonna improve to make it a lot more smoother for people to go back and forth?
That's a good question.
They're not keeping up with it now. 223rd is a good example. It's, you know,
Yeah.
And because we're talking about traffic and how it's gonna impact not only the neighborhood, but the entire area. And if it's owned by Multnomah County, are they gonna come in and help and say, okay, you know, we need to improve the traffic flow? Because I agree, send them to Marine Drive.
Yeah.
Instead of bringing them up to 23rd. Because even now, especially when they start the improvements with the sidewalks in that area, it's gonna be ugly. And thank God I don't have to travel that area very often. But it was just something, I was just looking at the map going,
It would be nice to get Multnomah County's like
All the way around now.
thoughts on, you know, could we get some improvements?
And, you know, if it's a permitted use, the city's code says that parking lots, any development involving a parking lot with more than 25 parking spaces is a type 3 site design review that would go to the planning commission. And if something like that was developed, you know, and it was on a Multnomah County road, Multnomah County would be in charge of reviewing their development for traffic impacts. And if they determine it's necessary for them to do a trip generation report or traffic impact study, they would need to do that like OK Express did when they went through their review.
thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Shall we move on to the
Yes.
tentative agenda?
Yes. Okay. All right, I'm gonna take this down here. All right, so the next meeting in October, I will provide an update on the city council's feedback related to this topic that we just discussed, related to truck parking. We will also, oh, actually, yes, I'm just thinking about our, oh, I was thinking I then missed the tree task force update as part of my tentative agenda, but that's next.
Oh, goodness.
Okay. Well, I hope that wasn't paused the whole time. So the next meeting, we'll get an update on the truck parking question, and talk about potential code amendments. We will also be doing, I would like to give you an update on the legislative session and some housing related changes that came out of that. DLCD gave an update on that recently, so I'd like to share that with you as well. And then we may have more of an update on our tree task force work. We do not currently have any land use applications that are pending. We've had some pre-application conferences, but there's nothing that's been submitted and nothing that will be ready for your review come October.
Okay.
So we're not going to have a meeting in October?
At this point, I am planning to have a meeting in October.
Okay, well, you've got down here the 22nd, which is a Wednesday.
Oh, sorry about that. So I guess it's the 23rd.
23rd,
Sorry, 21st.
21st.
21st. Okay, thank you for that correction.
Okay. So tree task force update is under commission and staff updates?
no, I was gonna ask about that. Do we have a full slate for the task force?
Oh, yeah. Did my neighbor apply?
No,
Ah, dang it.
Did Rich from Bridge Tree Service?
no.
Dang.
So we have put an announcement into the Fairview Point, it's coming out in the beginning of October, that the recruitment will be open until the end of October. So we'll see if we get any additional members. We just don't have very many people right now. But we did have a really good meeting with the Oregon Department of Forestry. They have a new staff person who they've assigned to work with Fairview, named Allison. So we met and she talked about resources that she can provide, and we're kind of getting started on our internal staff review and development of some initial recommendations for the tree task force to review. If the tree task force does not come to fruition, then I think we will, I'll consult with the city manager, but it would probably be something that maybe the planning commission could provide some feedback on, and then ultimately the revisions will just go to the city council for a review and adoption.
All right. Any other updates?
I just have a quick question, just for my own information. Our friend down at 223rd and Sandy, the boat guy, that field across the street from where he owns that land, those two boats have been sitting there for 4 years, and now they're almost totally covered by growth. Anything can be done about that?
I will check in with our code enforcement person to see if it is on his list, and if it's not, I will add it.
Yeah, because like I said, it's really looking crappy. I know it's his property, but he could at least take a weed whacker out there and do something.
Seriously.
I'm surprised.
So you're saying it's on the.
It's on the south side of Sandy, across from the new apartments.
Yes.
You know, the boat guy owns it. He has cleaned up his yard, but it still looks like crap.
All right.
I have something.
Okay.
I was talking with one of my neighbors, and we were talking about the light change at 201st and Halsey, where they put up the turning signals, the turn lights at that intersection. He was very appreciative. He thought the city did it, and I think that's county. So I said, no, that's the county.
Actually, it's the city of Gresham.
Oh, it was? Okay, well, I'll let him know then, but he was very appreciative because he got into an accident there a couple of years ago. And that was an intern, that, so he just wanted to thank the city about it was Gresham. Also, what is the parking requirements for private residential lots? There is a house on Halsey, right across from the ball field, averaging about 4, maybe half a dozen cars at a time. Sometimes even tractor trailers are parked in the lot, on that property.
We have enforced the tractor trailer parked on that property previously. So please feel free to contact me or our code enforcement officer, John Berlin, if you're noticing anything. The requirement for just, passenger vehicles is that they have to be parked on an approved surface. So you can't park it on your lawn.
And that's what they're doing.
But there's not a maximum number of vehicles that you are allowed to park necessarily on your property. But if if you have any reports of heavy trucks or parking on the lawn, please, let us know, and our code enforcement officer will check it out.
They don't park in their property, they park in the school parking lot across the street.
They do that too, and then if they can't, they'll park diagonally. And on Sunday, when I was driving by, there were at least 8 vehicles in that area, on the property.
Okay,
Are they operating the home, around there?
that's my understanding.
They are operating it, right, that they got the permission for that,
So that is a foster home then.
All right, any other updates?
No other updates from me.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion?
Second.
We have a motion and 2 seconds to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned, thank you.